During the summer vacation, 3 MIT students, Nick, Haley, and Jonah, are taking a cross-country trip to California. The two guys help Haley move her things. Her decision to live in another state for a year has created some tension between her and Nick, as they don't know what their relationship will be like. Nick's muscular dystrophy makes him feel like a burden. This further creates a distance between the two, which Haley finds very uncomfortable. However, the three of them still try to enjoy the trip and have as much fun as possible. They stop to eat at restaurants, visit aquariums, and Nick even teaches a boy how to get a toy from a claw machine. One evening, when the group is resting at a motel, Nick receives a message asking if he is feeling frustrated. The message is from Nomad, a hacker they had previously contacted for fun. However, when Nomad hacked into MIT's server system, the school administration tried to blame them, nearly getting them expelled. Nick immediately wakes Jonah up, and the two open Nick's laptop to check the mocking and confusing messages from Nomad. They decide to respond by warning Nomad that he needs to be careful, as they will expose him. Nomad retaliates by sending a video showing them in the room, which he had obtained by hacking into their laptop. Furious, the two guys immediately get to work and begin tracing Nomad's IP address. They discover he is in Nevada, which they will be passing through on their journey. The next day, the group continues on their way. Nomad sends them a photo of their car, which he had obtained from a security camera. Haley asks the guys to stop messing around with this hacker. Later, when the group stops at a gas station to buy food, Nick tells Jonah that he no longer wants to pursue Nomad, as he wants to focus on Haley's trip. This makes Jonah feel very frustrated. A few days pass, and the three continue stopping at tourist spots along the way. At one stop at another gas station, Nick goes inside to buy coffee, and Haley takes the opportunity to talk privately with Jonah. She asks Jonah if Nick has said anything about her decision to move away. Jonah simply replies that Nick feels disappointed and refuses to get involved in their issues. At that moment, Nick comes out with a coffee, but he slips and falls to the ground. His friends rush to help, but Nick insists he's fine and goes back inside to get more coffee. Haley follows Nick and says that she wants to help him because she knows he doesn't need help. However, Nick continues to remain distant. A little while later, when Nick returns to the car with his coffee, he tells Jonah that he has changed his mind and wants to continue pursuing Nomad. He also realizes that Haley is no longer in the car and begins searching for her. He finds her sitting on a cliff, and Haley guesses that Nick is planning to break up with her. She wonders why. Nick explains that he will soon have to be in a wheelchair and doesn't want to be a burden to her. This hurts Haley because she thinks their relationship is stronger than that. She decides to throw away the necklace he gave her before heading back to the car. As they continue their journey, Haley announces that she wants to go with the guys to pursue Nomad. By evening, the group reaches Nomad's address, which is an old house in the middle of the countryside. The guys begin to doubt whether the IP address they found might have been forged. They ask Haley to stay in the car while they go into the house with a camera to record everything. Outside, there is an old broken chair and an abandoned car near a strange tree. Inside, it's not much better, with lots of dirty and damaged furniture. Nick ventures deeper into the house and suddenly realizes he's alone. He searches for Jonah and finds him sitting in a chair in the corner of the room. This worries Nick, and he approaches, but Jonah turns around and scares him as a joke. Then, the two guys head to the basement, where they discover a row of dusty server racks. Their search is abruptly interrupted when they hear Haley scream, prompting them to rush outside to check. But when they get there, they only find the car door open and Haley gone. The radio begins emitting static, and there are strange sounds coming from the forest, including Haley's heavy breathing. The guys chase after her. At that moment, they see Haley rising in the air, before a blinding light makes them go blind and lose consciousness. Sometime later, Nick wakes up in an underground facility that seems very clean and sterile. He is wearing a hospital gown and has a blanket over him. He was being moved in a wheelchair by a man wearing protective gear. Nick feels dizzy and cannot move. He can only watch as he is brought into an office, where he meets Dr. Damon, who is recording the conversation and taking notes. Dr. Damon does not tell him where he is and refuses to let Nick call his parents. He explains that the three of them had made contact with an alien being, and that's why he's wearing protective gear. He warns that there is a risk of infection. Damon also wants to know when Nick first saw the signal. Nick doesn't understand the explanations and demands to know the whereabouts of his friends. Instead of answering, Damon rushes over to check Nick's condition, but it turns out Nick is only having a nosebleed. Afterward, Nick is left alone in his room. There, he discovers that he has numbers 2, 3, 5, and 41 tattooed on his arm and cannot feel his legs. The door to his room is locked, and he cannot leave unless they come to get him. However, there's a keypad he could use to escape if he figures out the password. The men in protective gear regularly take Nick out of the room for tests. On one occasion, Nick has a chance to peek into other rooms. These rooms are either empty or being cleaned because something horrifying happened there. In one of these rooms, Nick finds Haley, but the men do not allow him to see her. The next time Nick is brought to see Damon, he asks to meet Haley, but Damon refuses. Then, he starts asking strange questions, like whether Nick is from Earth and whether he has all 10 toes. Damon then asks about the signal that the group had been tracking, and Nick guesses he is talking about Nomad. So, Nick tells the whole story about the hacker. At this point, Damon brings in a recording that the guys had made while investigating the house. He pauses the video when the screen shows a tree, and from there an alien creature appears on the tree. This means that Nomad was never human. In his room, Nick is so confused that he can't eat or drink. Suddenly, he hears a voice calling his name. It's Jonah, speaking to him through the vents connecting their rooms. Jonah hasn't been told much either and hasn't even seen Haley, but he says his body doesn't feel right. However, Jonah has to cut the conversation short because he's afraid of being discovered. In the next meeting with Damon, Nick is asked to take a basic test involving shapes, colors, and numbers. Nick finishes the test quickly, with a challenging and sarcastic attitude. He called them out on this treatment, and demanded to see Haley, or he would no longer cooperate. Damon takes Nick to Haley's room, but they still don't go inside. Her file is completely empty because she is in a coma. However, Damon promises that as soon as Haley wakes up, Nick will be the first to see her. Nick returns to his room, determined to come up with an escape plan. He starts throwing cookie crumbs at the keypad. From that, he is able to tell which buttons have been pressed by the staff. He also exchanges information with Jonah through the vents. They learn the schedule of the facility, where everything operates like clockwork. However, Jonah seems to be getting more and more discouraged each day. He tells Nick that he can't feel his arm since they gave him something strange to drink. One evening, in another area of the facility, the staff are conducting an unclear experiment on a cow, pressing buttons to induce stimulation. Suddenly, the lights in the facility go out, and a voice from the alarm system announces that security has been breached. All the staff rush around to resolve the issue, causing Nick to try to hide in the bathroom. However, the men find him and take him to an office, where they must wait until the emergency is over. When he goes outside, Nick notices burn marks on the hallway walls. In the next meeting with Damon, Nick demands to know what happened in the hallway and insists on seeing Jonah. He knows that the staff has security cameras and is certain they saw him talking to Jonah through the vent, so he sees no reason to hide it. However, Damon insists that he knows nothing about it, and according to the doctor, Jonah was never at the facility. Nick refuses to believe this, but when he returns to his room, he can no longer hear Jonah through the vent. The loss of Jonah is the final shock that makes Nick determined to follow through with his escape plan. One afternoon, the staff discover Nick's room is empty. Under the blanket on the bed, they find a map that Nick had drawn of the facility to remember the schedule and the keypad password. Nick has finally figured everything out, and now he is sneaking down the hallway, dragging Haley's bed to escape. He counts the seconds as he turns corners to know when the staff will pass by and successfully gets closer to the escape door. He realizes that he can't reach the keypad. Nick still can't feel his legs, so he tries pressing the buttons with his elbow. But unfortunately, at that moment, the alarm goes off and the staff catch Nick in the act. Nick suddenly loses consciousness and drifts into dreams of the happy moments he once shared with Haley, and of the marathons he participated in. When he wakes up, Nick finds himself in a room with Haley, who has finally regained consciousness. Haley cries and says she dreamed that Nick won national competitions. The two try to hold hands, but the staff pulls them apart. When Haley faints again, Nick struggles against the staff's hold and falls to the floor. He then notices strange stains on his hands. Looking down, he is horrified to discover that his real legs have been replaced with advanced prosthetics. Nick begins to panic, and after checking under his underwear to make sure everything else is okay, he tries to stand up but stumbles. On the other side of the one-way mirror, Damon explains that this is why they hadn't said anything before. They had to wait until Nick was ready. Damon isn't interested in any excuses. Nick wraps a blanket around his legs to avoid seeing the metal and destroys the entire room. He then uses his new legs to kick the door down and continues to escape with Haley. Now that he can walk, whenever a staff member tries to stop him, Nick simply knocks them away with his crutches and kicks down any door blocking his path. Nick finally reaches the elevator with Haley, and they are stopped by Damon. Damon explains that the outside world is too dangerous for Nick, and he can only protect him inside the facility. Nick wanted to know what that meant, but just then, the elevator doors closed. A few seconds later, the two escape the facility through a dark tunnel. Once outside, Haley wakes up, and together, they catch a ride with an elderly woman. She seems harmless, but the way she speaks makes them uneasy, as she's not fully coherent. She even stops the car in the middle of the road to listen to what she calls the little angels of God, with her mouth wide open. The elderly woman takes them to a roadside diner, and Nick asks Haley to wait in the truck while he goes inside to make a call. Fortunately, no one comments on Nick's appearance when he enters the diner, but using the phone is useless because it doesn't work. Suddenly, Nick hears the truck outside drive away with Haley, and he quickly realizes the reason. On the TV, an announcement is made that Nick and Haley have escaped, and anyone who sees them should report them to the authorities. Desperate, Nick starts running after the truck and catches up to the window. However, the truck driver uses the door to push him out. As the driver begins to accelerate at high speed, Nick easily uses his new legs to catch up with him. The truck driver is trying to figure out what to do when suddenly he hears a noise beside him. It's Haley. She has found the driver's gun and used it to force him to stop. The couple reunites and leaves the driver behind, continuing their escape in the truck. Meanwhile, Damon and his team are also out there, searching for the two young people. They encounter the elderly woman first, and take her back to the facility for questioning. However, when she only speaks nonsense, Damon decides to bring in a gun to end what he deems her endurance. Back with Nick and Haley, they discover that the road they're on is a dead end, which doesn't make sense because the road seems to have disappeared overnight. They turn back to the truck and choose a different route. Soon, they start to feel like they are going in circles, driving through identical places. Finally, they decide to stop at a visitor center to look for clues. The phone here also doesn't work, and all the documents are related to nature. The only map they find is a large model, but it doesn't make sense as it doesn't match the roads they've just traveled. Haley begins to show signs of not feeling well, and Nick decides that they will stay the night here. This also gives Damon and his team more time to search for them. The couple continues running deeper into the building to hide. They are terrified when they encounter someone in a protective suit, but it turns out to be Jonah, who had been in the facility as Nick had suspected. He escaped by wearing the protective suit to avoid attention. As the staff surround the area, Damon arrives to check on the neighbor in charge of the visitor center, who says nonsensical things just like the elderly woman before. Damon admits that he is deeply intrigued by this person. He eventually shoots him dead, before placing a dead fish back into the aquarium at the visitor center. Haley fell asleep, and Nick discovered that she had some kind of implant in her spine. Jonah explained that he thought they were in Area 51. Which was confirmed by the fact that the numbers in their tattoos added up to 51. Everything around them didn't seem real. The roads didn't make sense, and the people behaved very strangely. Jonah believed they were in a government facility, where the three of them were being used for experiments. Nick gets a leg replacement and Jonah reveals that his hand has also been replaced with a prosthetic. There was only one way to go, so the next morning, the three decided to drive to a military checkpoint. Jonah tried to pretend to be a soldier by wearing the protective suit, but the military wasn't fooled and immediately surrounded the truck. Jonah quickly struck a soldier with the truck door and snatched his weapon. He used the weapon to push back the remaining soldiers and then entered the nearest building. There, Jonah attempted to use a computer to expose what was really happening. However, his thick metal fingers couldn't reach the keys. At that moment, the soldiers threw a grenade through the window, and the building exploded. Nick thought he had lost Jonah, but in reality, he was still alive and went outside to reunite with his friends. A soldier took the opportunity to shoot Jonah, and Nick ran to help him. But Jonah failed, telling Nick to run with Haley while he stayed behind to deal with everything. Following Jonah's last words, Nick and Haley escaped in the truck. Jonah used his new prosthetic hands to start destroying all the structures around and even the road, in an effort to stop the military soldiers. A while later, Nick and Haley were about to cross the only bridge that could take them through the canyon. However, they discovered the road was blocked by Damon and his henchmen. They shot at the tires, causing the truck to overturn. Nick began to have more memories of his old life before collapsing to the ground. At that moment, Haley revealed that she still kept the necklace Nick had given her, handing it to him and saying that she loved him. The facility's staff quickly took Haley away. Damon approached Nick, telling him that he was the perfect combination of human and alien technology, the greatest achievement of their kind. Nick looked at him and finally realized that Damon, spelled backwards as Nomad, was the hacker they had contacted before. Damon confirmed this and reiterated that it was Nick who had made the first contact with the hacker. In pain and fury, Nick finally became enraged enough to activate the full power of his prosthetic legs. He ran at lightning speed across the bridge until he hit an invisible wall, breaking it and passing through in seconds. Once through the wall, Nick was stunned to discover that he had been in outer space all along. Damon was an alien robot, and all the locations on Earth were just simulations. They were actually on an alien spaceship, with the numbers 2, 3, 5, 41, just like Nick's tattoo. The ship was preparing to dock at a strange alien world. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications to watch more interesting videos. Thank you for watching.